Tony Hunt of Yorkshire Archaeological Aerial Mapping. He gave a short speech to us, a short lecture to us after our AGM last year, 2 years ago. Two years ago. And he would have been a, should we say, a real life speaker last year. But of course, things being what they are, we're doing them over the internet. And of course, he does aerial archaeology by drone. And I was staggered by that 20-minute taster, and I, frankly, as a buildings man, as a history man, am staggered and astonished by the images. It's not just parch marks, it's soil, it's conditions, it's interpreting a site without digging a trench and even finding new sites. So with that in mind, no more spoilers, I'll hand you over to our speaker, Tony Hunt.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, it's astounding to think that it was such a while ago, and so much has happened in the time that we last all sat down together, and I remember it very, very well. It was a good evening. So what I'd like to do is bring you up to date with what I've been doing. Seeing the Light Fantastic. The reason for that Terry Pratchett stolen title may become apparent as we move through. So let me just see if I can get these slides to change. There we go. So that's me. Since we last spoke, I think I was just beginning an MA by research in crop mark formation in archaeology at Hull University, having been mugged at a conference by the legendary Dr. Peter Holken and persuaded to get some of the work that I was doing down on paper and formalized. At the time, I was focusing on recording sites in Yorkshire, which you know, especially ones which are suffering damage from farming, from agriculture, and frankly from neglect and landowner ignorance, innocent ignorance most of the time. However, things have moved on a little bit since then, as I'll explain. So I'm based at Hull University part-time, and pretty much left to get on with my own research and play with my toys. I do have a full-time job as well, and some of you may also know me from the Council for British Archaeology in Yorkshire, where I try and keep control of a very diverse group of archaeologists. So thanks to Dr. Peter Holken at Hull University, and also somebody that you probably haven't heard from or seen before, a gentleman called Andy Hickey, and I'll explain where Andy comes into this. He's, like some people listening here tonight, have been working in similar ways, looking at similar ideas and developing some different techniques that we've managed to pull together with the work that I've been doing. So we'll come on to Andy's particular arcane science in a moment. So basic principle, we take a drone, it flies along, it takes lots and lots of photographs, and as you can see from this carefully sculpted landscape below it, we pick up lumps and bumps in the ground, and we can map those with a level of accuracy. So here's a typical site. If you can see my mouse moving around here. So there's the start position. The drone flies up and down the green lines. This is using a software called Drone Deploy, which is good software, not very cheap to use, but it's good software. Sometimes some support issues, but takes hundreds and hundreds of photographs, and then we can assemble those to a high resolution image of the site. So this is Cawthorne Roman camps up at Pickering. I'm sure many of you have been there. It's a nice walk. If you haven't been, I would definitely get up there. Sorry, Buck. Four Roman forts on the edge of a steep escarpment, fantastic location. But what we can do then is we can take these images, we can zoom in down to plant level. I can put a line across the features that we see, and we can map and get a good interpretation of the shape of the features. We can make 3D models of them, which we can manipulate, turn around, spin. And even though I did this flight back, probably when I saw you, back in 2018, last saw you, you can see that I can easily measure, go back to it today, measure distances between points, measure slopes, heights, and like I say, get a nice profile. So that's all quite easy, and there's quite a few people doing things like this today. We can then produce a three-dimensional model like this, an elevation map, which shows and emphasizes the earthworks. And you can see here, you've got these lovely, I'm sure one of the Roman specialists, proper archaeologists, will be able to tell me what they're called, because I've forgotten, but these defended gates into this, what's probably a cavalry enclosure. And then you've got the other three forts to make up the collection. So it's and we can do this with any site, any period, obviously. We can do it with Roman forts. Another Roman fort here. This is the one Archaeological up on Adrian's Wall. You can see that somebody unfortunately chucked a road across it, but apart from that, it's not in bad condition. And you can see that the elevation emphasis has brought out not just the bathhouse over here, but a few other ancillary buildings down here, and buildings actually inside the fort itself. This is the headquarters building. Roman forts, as you all know, I'm sure, carry a very, very standardized plan. There's a barracks block, and there'll be the usual granaries and other ancillary buildings all around. So the drones, that takes like 15 minutes, a typical flight.
Hi, Tony. Sorry.
Hello.
Can I just interrupt briefly?
Of course.
We've just had a query that it's all very exciting, but your cursor is very, very small. So be able to move it slightly more slowly.
I will indeed. I won't try and change it because I'm not sure I can do that without breaking it. But yes, I will slow it right down. Absolutely. So let me do a bit slower. Bathhouse and barrack block here. This is the headquarters building in this one. So these are just good example sites of what we can do with, if you like, traditional aerial photography combined with elevation mapping. And this is another Roman fort. They do show up particularly well, to be honest with you. This is Bainbridge up in the Yorkshire Dales, and here you can see this area to the right is the Vicus. You can see the Roman road running through here, and you can see the shapes of the civilian buildings, and then inside these quite impressive defences, you can see again barrack blocks, houses, and other military hardware going on in there. And the final fort, this is Hardnut, my favourite. If anyone's ever been there, they'll know when I say it's an interesting journey. If you haven't been there, I really would recommend you go, as it is quite an astounding sight, and what I can only describe as a terrifying drive to get up there, especially in the car that I was driving at the time. So, and you can see that to map, if anyone has been up there, it's bleak, it's wild, it is exactly what it looks like. It's a vast rocky place. And to be able to map the entire site in 20-30 minutes is just a dream come true, really. And one very interesting little thing with this particular site is that if you look over here, there is a high point over here, and you can actually see from the drone that this is clearly a lookout point, and it's been done deliberately. And there's actually another one over here. If you can see those, I'm moving the mouse nice and slowly for you now, Francis. And you can actually see that there are small lookout points on these two cardinal points overlooking the vast landscape that this fort defends. So move on. We can do the same thing with the priories. This is the priory, Marton Priory in Yorkshire, and you can see the earthworks of the priory coming out nicely here. You can see region furrow plough marks. You can see how the priory has been taken over by these modern farm buildings underneath it. And another Eldmeyer, which is another deserted medieval village, which I'd never heard of and literally stumbled across. And you can see that this is a great one. I love this picture because you can see the drone is bringing out the water management that these sites are so famous for, where we have a drain coming into fish ponds here, round the moat, and then draining down here and to join back to the river. So you've got a fantastic medieval water management system going on to make sure that the fish have got clean water and that the unpleasant water that's coming out of the moated manor house here is flushed away nice and neatly. And you can see as well that you've got all these other structures and buildings around the village, as well as the usual ridge and furrow plough marks. So it's again 20 minutes to map this, and we've got that site preserved now, and we can record it over time and keep an eye on the state of the site and make sure that it's not degrading. So that's a great way of using drones in archaeology. Very, very simple. There's nothing complicated about this. I've been doing this for 5 years, and I could sit and show you amazing sites from the air for the next hour quite happily. But we're now moving on a little bit. So this picture here is an orthomosaic picture. So that is a combination of hundreds of photographs. This is the Roman road on the way into Aldborough. And you can see here's the road coming from Aldborough. You can actually see that it appears to be 3 carriageways. And you can clearly see 1, 2, 3 there. When you get to this point here, things get suddenly blurred. And you can see that the road has actually got a kink to it there. And what the theory is that what we have here is this is one gang of people building this bit. Here's another gang of people building this bit. And like all good civil engineering projects, somebody got their measurements slightly wrong. And this is the join. This is where the road is actually joined with 2 slightly different structures. And you can see quite clearly that you do have 2 very slightly different structures here. Now we're going to come back to this picture later when I show you what we're working on. But that's another good example of getting a nearly a mile-long section of road, photographing it in optimum conditions and keeping a record of how that looked in these lovely conditions. And this was in 2018, the famous year for picking up really astounding crop marks. So, and that's just zooming in to show you, not quite as focused as I thought it would be, but the original, we can get down practically to plant level. So you can get right in there, but unfortunately that picture looks like a PowerPoint has downgraded it slightly, but never mind. So, a couple more sites for you. This is Leconfield Castle over in East Yorkshire. Particularly like this one because not only have we've got the moated site here with the crop marks over here and various fish ponds. You can see the water of the moat standing out. But you can actually see Leconfield was quite famous because it was brick built. It was a Percy house and it was a brick built castle with a timber top. You can actually see the brick walls here showing up in these grassy mounds. And this is one of the pictures that actually got me thinking, you know, what is it that we're actually seeing here? What is causing these crop marks? Not the traditional view of crop marks are differential ripening. So as crops ripen, archaeology in the ground underneath the crops makes the crops ripen at different rates. And therefore you can see, when the timing is absolutely right, you can see crop marks. But I think that we can see different things. And that's Eldmire for some reason. We've got that one. Sigson Castle. I'm just going to flick through these quite quickly. This is where our wonderful Chancellor lives. Not actually in the castle, it's a ruin, but in the village of Sigson. And Henges, one of my personal little hobbies. These 200-meter wide earthen temples up on the Ure Swale Plain. Hutton Moor, which is nearly gone. Cinderby, absolutely no sign on the ground, but we can pick it up from the drone with a fair wind and some reasonable imagery. Carnarvon, which I'm going to come back to later. This one's showing up in a false color image. These astounding rings, as I say, 200-300 meters across. Nunwick, again, exactly the same size. So these are and this is the Maiden Castle up in the Dales, up near Richmond. And you can see that if we zoom right into this image, we're collecting some pretty impressive data. This little structure here, we get down to the, literally be able to see the individual stones that are making it up. So a great way of recording archaeology. Now, So since 2015, we recorded over 600 sites, most of them for local archaeology groups and voluntary groups. Now starting to focus efforts on the creation, formation, development of crop marks. So what exactly is causing crop marks? What exactly and how exactly can we see them without having to wait for the sheer chance that 2018 was, summer of 2018 or late summer 2018, when we had a wet spring, if you recall, and then a long hot summer, which allowed the cereal crops that were growing over archaeology to either stress and get ill or grow much better than their compatriots, depending on whether they were growing over archaeological stone hard walls or growing over nice deep juicy ditches. So crop marks are the key indicator of hidden archaeology in an agricultural landscape. But what is a crop mark? So here's my highly technical, tell me if I'm going too fast for you, highly technical explanation of what a crop mark is. So here's our topsoil, here's our, this poor little plant picture is going to be having a hard time over the next half hour because I'm using quite a few slides. So when you're growing over a filled ditch, you got more space for your roots, the roots go deeper, the plant grows richer and taller. When you're growing over normal soil, let's take that as our base point. And when we're growing over this Roman wall here, you can see that carefully just below the surface, the plant is going to be stunted. It's got hardly any soil, and it grows to a different height. As these plants grow, they ripen. As they ripen differentially according to which one of those three they are, and the crop marks show up. We all saw that. We saw some amazing pictures. However, let's just have a look at a little bit of physics. Here we have the visible spectrum. This is sunlight. Over here we've got infrared. Leave that over there for a moment. Over here we've got ultraviolet. In the middle we've got the bit that we can see with our eyes, which is the red, green, blue, RGB. We all see RGB images from our camera. We all see RGB images in our if you do any image processing. Red, green, blue. Now, you notice light waves, the wavelength in nanometers from 400 to 700. That's the visible spectrum. That's what we can see, and that's what our cameras are designed to see. Excuse me. Over here is infrared, that's 700 plus, and down here is ultraviolet. We don't need to worry about ultraviolet tonight. But plants see slightly different things. So if we take the RGB, so this is 400 through to 700 nanometers wavelength. And above that, the infrared, which is 700 to about 900. When we shine sunlight at a plant, it absorbs the blue band, it absorbs the red band, but the reason plants are green is because it partly reflects the green. Okay, so we have red and blue being absorbed in photosynthesis, and the green is slightly bounced back. It's got a little bit of bounce back. But the infrared, all of it is reflected, or nearly all of it is reflected by the plant. So what we have are two bands which are being absorbed, and we have one band which is a bit reflected, and one band which is completely reflected. So what we also get is the green and the infrared are reflected at different rates come off the plant, according to whether it's big plant, small plant, or the medium plant. So what we can actually get is light reflectance working differently according to the health of the plant. So a normal plant is growing in this part of the field. This is a field, by the way. A big strong plant is growing over the ditches, as we saw earlier, where we've got these deep ditches filled with much more nutrients, much more moisture, much more resilient to drought. And then over stony areas, the weaker plants grow, or causes plants to grow weaker. So I came up with this, I call it the Tony scale of plant reflectance, okay? And it's very technical. We have not much, some, quite a lot, and loads, okay? So when plants are sprouting in young, now this is serious stuff now. In reflectance, this is only talking about reflectance, hardly any red and hardly any blue because they're absorbed. Quite a bit of green and lots of infrared. A normal plant, we have huge amounts of infrared, and again, hardly any red and blue, and again, reasonable amount of green. So these weaker and normal plants and strong plants, now our eyes, we're only seeing this bit. They all look the same, but in the infrared, we're seeing significant difference, especially what's called the near infrared, which is just beyond what we can see. Then we have the, can't actually see what that says because it's hidden by the sharing bar, but hey ho, I'm pretty sure it's saying a weaker plant. And finally, when a plant gets ripe, it effectively dies. I don't know if you realize this, but cereal crops which are ripe are effectively dead, which is why they go yellow. And it's the change between the living and the dead, the ripening, where we can see a difference. And that's where it changes. And that's why you can see with these three bands, these three visible bands, that's where we see the change. And the differential ripening is what we traditionally call a crop mark. But what's going on over here between when the plants are young, look at them today. Here we are at the first weeks of April. The plants are no more than, sprouting 6 inches high, possibly. How can we see crop marks in times other than stressful times at the end of the growing season in a drought? And this is, I wonder if we can do something with that. So here's a graph which looks more complicated than it is actually very, very simple. Here's the healthy vegetation, this green line, and you can see this bump here. So that is reflecting in the green spectrum, and this is why plants look green. As I said, they look green because they reflect green light back to our eyes. Our eyes can see green. They absorb the blue, they absorb the red, and they reflect loads of NIR, near infrared. Okay, and unhealthy vegetation is the red line, if you can see that. And that reflects much less. Okay, so what we have is a difference in reflectance according to the health of the vegetation in the infrared. So I hope that isn't too burdensome. Let me show you what we can actually do with that then. So I asked myself the question: is it possible to build or modify a camera and mount it on a drone? Because remember, right at the beginning, we talked about the controlled flight path of the drone, where we can tell it exactly where to go, and it tells us exactly where each picture was taken, down to centimeter accuracy sometimes. So is it possible to have that control of the photographs, but with a camera which can only see, or can see, this near infrared reflected light and spot this differential reflectance in the near infrared? Okay, so spot the differential reflectance that we were talking about here. Well, obviously I wouldn't be here tonight if the answer to that was most definitely no, we can't. So what we're looking for is a camera that can't just see this visible part of the spectrum, this red, green, blue, but can also see part of this. Now, these cameras are commercially available, but the tricky bit, the very tricky bit in archaeology, is to get a camera that can see one absorption spectra, blue. I picked blue completely at random because it's separated from infrared. So you've got red over here, you've got blue over here, and there's a separation. So this camera, I work in an electronics factory, a small electronics factory that makes military hardware. Here's some of my colleagues. So gave me the wonderful opportunity to take this camera and convert it to only see the blue and infrared spectra. So let me show you what we can do with this camera. Let me show you some experiments. So this is a site that some of you may have visited. I know Margaret's in the audience, whose site this is. This is Kaywood. And this is an aerial picture I took in 2019, early, probably about this time 2 years ago. Now you can see that there are crop marks in this field. You can see there are lines all over the place. You can see that some of them are drainage. You can see the very faint, regular parallel lines running here and the same running here. But some of them are also clearly other, let's say other reasons. So if we take that picture in the near infrared, we get this. If we then apply a little bit of processing, then we get this. So here's the Roman archaeology, Romano British archaeology. There's a nice enclosure there. There's another one there, a bit of a roundhouse coming out here. A few roundhouses down here. This strange big square feature, which you have to read Margaret's book, available from all good booksellers and quite a few dodgy ones as well, if you want to learn about this site. And you can see as well that the archaeology is mixed in with these drainage channels still, which I'll come back to in a bit. Other sites, this is Peter Holken's dig at Kipling Farm up in the Wolds, this huge late Bronze Age Neolithic temple with a kind of enclosure on one side here. Again, now written up and almost certainly available in a book. And this site here, which is down near the River Went at Went Bridge, you see it's a fantastic site. Not quite sure what's going on here. It looks at first sight like an Iron Age multi-ballot enclosure, but it could be other things. And you can see that this image from Google Earth, and it's very important, this image. This image was the cause of huge amounts of work and quite a big revelation. And I'll show you why, because when we took infrared pictures of this site, we didn't get any archaeology, even though Google Earth on the picture on the left shows some pretty incredible banks and ditches and roundhouses and other things, which I'm not even sure what they are. So where's the archaeology? We can't see it. We should be able to see this in the infrared. So we went back and took some RGB pictures, and it's not there either. So what I decided to do was start digging into, excuse the pun, start digging into the colour spectra. And this is where Andy Hickey, who lives in Scotland, he's a medical imaging expert. And he contacted me and said, I'm interested in what you're doing. And he's been doing some similar experiments with a slightly different method. So Andy and I decided to try and find a way of extracting archaeological imagery from the pictures that we were taking. So the first thing we did was, remember the red, green, blue, near infrared. So you got absorption, reflection, absorption, reflection. We first of all extracted the 4 color channels from this image. Then there's the red, the blue, the green, and the infrared. And the near infrared shows up quite pale to our eyes. And again, no archaeology there, although if you kind of start to look, you might just be able to see some faint shapes appearing. So what Andy and I did was come up with what we call the HHGVC method. And what we have written is an algorithm that takes the 4 color channels and extracts from them by using a differential processing. And this is part of my MA, which I do need to get written up so you all understand, you can copy it. But it looks for micro changes in the red, green and blue and extrapolates the variances using the infrared as a baseline. So what we do is we take the infrared and we look for differences in the other channels as a stack above the infrared. And so what we get from the Wentbridge site is, there's the green image, the red, blue, green image. And what we get is that. So this is a huge step forward. What we've done here is we've actually been able to extract archaeology that we knew was there because of the Google Earth image from an RGB image which has no archaeology showing by using this new method. So our conclusion is, by looking at this, is that crops grow differentially all the time in all conditions, and differential growth results in differential reflectance. Very simple. But this differential reflectance can't be seen without properly equipped cameras. And if we process it further using the right methods, then we can extract hidden archaeology from it. So it's the first time we can easily extract differential reflectance from full RGBN images. So let me show you a couple of sites where we've used this technology. Excuse me. So let's go back to Cawood. When we were working on Cawood, James Law from AOC Archaeology, who also did quite a bit of work there, wanted to look at the comparison of this kind of imagery with the magnetometry that he was doing for the Cawood group. And one of the reasons the magnetometry didn't work as well as it could have done or should have done was because you can see this is a very, very soggy field. And anyone who was on the dig will tell you this is a soggy field, this is a wet field. And you can see that the various farmers over various times have laid in 2 or 3 different drainage channel sets. There's one there, look, running kind of 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. There's one here running kind of 11 o'clock down to 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock. I can tell the time now. And there's another one here running north-south as well. You can see these regular lines. And they're actually interfering with the archaeology. They make this cluster of ditches here actually look like a big square. But how many of these ties to these squares are actually caused by drainage ditches, and how many of them are archaeology? Well, what we sorry, I'm just marking out the drainage ditches. So James asked me, is there any way of getting rid of the drainage channels to just leave the archaeology? And we had to think about this, and we thought, well, actually, perhaps there is, because if the differential growth is caused by a ditch, then it will be reflecting in one particular near-infrared frequency. But if it's caused by a drainage channel or a blocked up drainage channel, it will cause the plants to reflect in a different frequency, theoretically. So we tried it and we came up with this image here. Now you can see straight away it's the same section, but all of a sudden most of the drainage channels have gone. And what we were astounded to see, and genuinely astounded, not only have we got rid of the drainage channels, but we also started to see a lot more archaeology. And you can see that where the arrows are pointing are clusters, and I do mean clusters, of roundhouses. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of roundhouses showing up. We lost count quite a long way into the, it's a fairly high numbers. And this one here, you can see here that there is actually a kind of a flower petal effect caused by constant rebuilding of these roundhouses over time. And you can see that you could see 1 or 2 roundhouses on the original image, the kind of the pink and yellow image on the previous slide. We've now got what looks like a kind of like industrial site here, pits and enclosures everywhere. We've got these big double ditched enclosures with roundhouses. We've got roundhouses here in another kind of daisy petal cluster. There's another one up here. And these look like, and my interpretation of these is that what you've got here is a roundhouse, which perhaps only lasts 5 years before it gets a bit soggy. So it's just taken down and rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt and rebuilt. There's nothing to say that a roundhouse would last more than a couple of years. They didn't have damp-proof courses. They didn't particularly have any drainage. These may not even have been permanent structures, permanent settlements. And suddenly we're seeing so much more archaeology. So yeah, it said result there at the bottom, which we're quite pleased with that. So the conclusion of this part of our research is that the HHGVC algorithm can process an image, not just the archaeology, but this was the shocking conclusion, was that we can also filter out crop marks according to their causal factors by adjusting the filters, the software filters, not the hardware filters. So in other words, we can process an image that we took 2 or 3 years ago in different ways to show different things. And this is why, just to give you a little graphical representation, where a plant is growing over a solid object, it grows small and it reflects the near infrared differently to a plant which is growing over a deep ditch, which reflects the near infrared in that angle. So what we end up with is different different reflectance according to what's causing the plant growth to change. So we come back to this graph. Do you remember this graph where we can see the green bump here? And we said that unhealthy vegetation is down here. But what we're postulating, what I'm postulating, is that actually we get bumps in the frequency curve according to different causes. I'm labouring the point a little bit here because this is quite revolutionary. This is by the way, a little shot from Caewin, probably one of the things that we're most proud of, because I'm sure you can see that it looks like we have what could possibly be a Romano British temple on the site, and that needs a little bit of investigation. I thought I'd just chuck that one in there because I quite like that. So I'm now going to jump into a couple more sites and just show you a little bit of archaeology. So I will route through these quite quickly. If you want to shout at Francis, if you want me to stop or go back, I certainly will. Carnarvon Henge is one of the series of 7 great henges on the Swale valleys, on the plain between the Ure and the Swale in North Yorkshire. Some of them are aligned. There appears to be at least 1 or 2 alignments. A new one turned up a couple of years ago at Cinderby, which I was really proud to be one of the first people, the first person to photograph it. Now this one is Carnarvon. So this one is on that picture. Here's the henge. It's 200 meters across. So this is quite a high scale image. There it is. You can just about see it. It's completely plowed out. On the ground, there is a few very slight lumps and bumps. Now let's process this under the new image processing, and we get this. Now the first thing to see is that you can even see the causeway entrance across the banks and ditches. There's nothing on, again, nothing on the ground. It's completely gone. This blob here is actually a little pond, a little lake that's formed. But what I was particularly shocked at when we came to process this image is all the numbers represent other archaeology, unrecorded archaeology in and around the henge. So what it looks like is these henges aren't standalone ritual temple affairs, but they actually appear to have a whole cluster all around them of very, very strong archaeology. And I've numbered some of the more obvious features, not actually all of them. I ran out of patience, to be honest with you. So number 1 is obviously the henge itself. These dark and pale alternate circles represent bank, ditch, entranceways facing up to roughly north-south. The next, if you carry on another mile or so, probably less than a mile actually, you come to another one of these exactly the same. But all the other henges in this sequence, in this alignment, have all had their surroundings largely either ploughed or quarried away. Now, what we're seeing here is the disaster that quarrying around these henges is, because there is archaeology absolutely everywhere. So there's the henge. The next one, number 2, is these this very slightly difficult to see, to be fair, blob here. It's this pale area here, and this is actually marked on one of the old maps from 1850 as a burial mound, a lost burial mound. The next feature that we can see is another circle, another complete earthen circle, which has never been recorded, and that is just off there, number 3. You can actually see it better on the zoom out. The next one is these enclosures, which don't have a period. Obviously, we haven't done any digging up here yet, but they are almost certainly associated with the henge. I actually have a suspicion that they may form a boundary around the henge. If you can see that, if you extrapolate that one that way and this one that way, you will actually end up with a square feature that sits very, very nicely around, equidistant around the henge. So perhaps this is a dividing line in the same way that medieval abbeys had a dividing line between the profane and the ecclesiastical. So this is dividing the gods area or the temple area from the other circles, the other features on this site. So the next one is this big square here, not a square barrow, far too big. It's 25 meters square. So what's going on there? If you remember the site I showed you, I said was Peter Holken's hilltop dig at Kipling, where we had the Bronze Age curved enclosure. Just outside of that is a square enclosure. And we see exactly the same thing at a site called Thwing, up on the near Rudston, up on the moors. So perhaps what we have here is some sort of boneyard or a burial place, or some sacred thing, to do with the proximity of the henge. I'm going to run through these a little bit quicker now. That's number 5. Number 6 is this cluster of pits and holes here. There's another circle here which I haven't even marked. Number 7 is another huge circle. So you've got number 3 and number 7. So all this is new archaeology. None of this has been recorded. Number 8 is a smaller circle there with this unusual feature here. I hope you can see that. And 7 is what looks like a smaller circle, but I'd actually want to see that one photographed again before I was entirely sure. So all of this archaeology, apart from the henge itself and the barrow, number 2, which you can now perhaps see a little bit better when I zoomed out, that pale spot there. All of this is new archaeology, unrecorded, and revealed by our first test flight with the new camera. I'll just get rid of these. So that was quite an exciting site. If we move a little bit further north, we come to the Thornborough Southern Henge. Now, Dr. Jan Harding, Durham University, did a huge amount of work at the Thornborough Henges back in the 90s. There they are. So there's another 3 of these great circles, and these 3 are aligned. I haven't bothered to photograph the northern one because it's actually completely surrounded by woodland, if you know the site. So there's unfortunately not much for us to see there. But these 2 are in reasonable condition. This one has still got these huge banks and ditches, and the southern one down here is the one that we're going to focus on. Now, in this area here, there is a burial mound, a large burial mound, and it's called the Centre Hill Barrow. Fairly unimaginative when you see where it is. So the Centre Hill Barrow are completely lost. However, we put the drone over on a freezing cold December day, and we can see here, there's the barrow. You can see the outer ditch of it. Let me just go back to this image here. So that is there where the mouse is now, just about. And you can see there's no sign of it whatsoever in the normal vision, if you like. So here it is showing up here. There are different ways of processing images using the new method, by filtering different color channels against each other. When we filtered this one a different way, the barrow actually came out square, which I was a little bit bemused by. Not only is it square, but it's got a weird shape. Can you see that kind of triangular blob inside it? So I showed this to my professor, Peter Holken, and there it is. You can see the square much better there, and you can also see this weird blob much better. And he said, has it ever been dug? And I said, well, yes, it was dug in 1860, and it was dug in 1990. And he said, get a picture of the 1860 dig. So I did. And the square shape is the 1860 trench. That's exactly how it's described. And even Jan Harding, when he dug it in the 90s, said a squarish positive anomaly at the centre of the barrow could conceivably be the remains of Lucas's excavation trench, which is the 1860 dig. And there you can see the geophysics just about picked up this square blob there. So we have results comparable to geophysics taken from 300 feet up in about 10 minutes using our new camera. And you can see here's the Centre Hill Barrow showing up quite nicely. What's interesting as well is that not only have we got the Centre Hill Barrow with its ditch there, look, but this showed up in the same image set. And it actually looks, what we may have is an unrecorded cursus monument running across between the southern and the central henges of Thornborough. And that needs a little bit more investigation. And there again is our barrow. Something else that came out from the same image set is, here's the barrow again at the top of this image. Now, if you can just see down here, there's these series of black spots just running down here. Now, that Dr. Harding recorded that there were 120 Neolithic pits running from the Sentihill Barrow, running south down off the site. And he actually excavated most of them. So there we can see those pits showing up on the aerial photos. And this isn't on crop, this is on scrub grassland. So this was a very good indicator back in December when we finally managed to get the software and the camera working together. This was a good indicator that we might be onto something. And this is the centre henge at Thornborough. And what I want to show you in this picture, it looks like an awful mess, to be honest with you. But what I want to show you in this picture is, if you look at this from the 1960s, here is the famous and now lost Thornborough cursus. You can see these double ditch here running across underneath the henge, so it's earlier than the henge, and then running down here. Now, most of it has been destroyed because everything from this field boundary has been quarried away and replaced. So they just dug the whole thing away, left the henge standing like an island, and then filled it all back in again, extracting gravel. However, if you look at the image that we produced, not terribly easy to see, to be fair, but you can see the Thornborough cursus just showing up on the edge of the quarry, coming out of the henge and coming across the grass. So again, on the same day that we were looking at the Sentihill Barrow, we had some nice results from that. So Weldrake Iron Age Farm is, as it says there, a complex of Iron Age enclosures and roundhouses. There's the RGB image, the normal vision image, if you like. And I'm not going to deny that you can probably see that there's a bit of a crop arc here, and there's some roundhouses here and a few ditches and things. But when we took the picture again using the new camera, remember we're looking here at near infrared, and we're comparing the near infrared to one of the absorption channels, the blue or the red, in this case blue, highly processed. But not only are we picking up all these plough lines, but not only are we picking up the drainage lines, as you see more drainage ditches, the curse of my life, but we can see here that we're actually picking up a whole settlement in almost perfect detail over this field. A very, very tricky site to photograph, because this hedge line here is actually the hedge line of Elvington Airfield, and we had to get some cooperation from air traffic control to allow us to do it. And I spent most of the time the drone was in the air, terrified it was either going to get shot down or I was going to get arrested. But they were very cooperative and very, very enthusiastic. So there you go, before and after. Not bad, very pleased with that. And there's a zoom in. You can see that this roundhouse down here is actually enclosed and can only be accessed from this roundhouse here. And you've even got features inside these big roundhouses, these pits and these lines here. So Deer Street, let's talk about Deer Street. Right at the top of the show, I mentioned that Deer Street runs towards Oldborough. I showed you an aerial photograph showing you where the two parts of the road met. Here is again, same picture. This one is turned round, so you're running north-south. This tree is the marker point. This site is about half a mile from my house. I live just up this hill here. And this tree is the marker point. So whenever I'm looking for the Roman roads, I drive past, I always look for this tree. I know the Roman road is running along there. If we process the image, again, it looks a mess until you kind of get your eye in. But what we've actually got here are these rectangular structures. We've got in the field next to the Roman road, we've got this pit affair here, another rectangular structure there. So suddenly, and there's quite a big circular structure there. These are ditches, This is Iron Age Romano-British features showing up in the field next to the Roman road and enhanced and brought out by the new camera. A very convenient test site for me because I can practically get to this without even leaving my house. So lots of archaeology showing up there, which we haven't seen before. And similarly here, again, roundhouses showing up all over this site. And you can see this, these enclosures here running across ditches and other archaeology. And one thing that I am quite pleased with is in that shadow there, you can perhaps see that we possibly have got some Roman buildings. Again, they need to be looked at. So I'll skip through these. Arras Farm is the famous Iron Age cemetery near Market Wheaton. So famous that it actually gave its name to the entire culture, burial culture of the Arras culture. There's the before shot, there's the after. These are chalk pits, but these are square barrows. And what's particularly interesting, and we haven't seen this before, is that it appears that the square barrows are actually in little clusters, I don't know, family clusters, and surrounded by ditches. Now that's not been picked up before, even by geophysics. You can see them there, kind of like a spider's web of burial mounds, and they extend across the field. There's over 80 of them. This is the one called the King's Barrow, which if you want to know more about that, that's a very impressive dig, and some nice finds came out of that. Not that we're treasure hunting in any way, of course. I'll show you Ad Gethrin, my personal favourite site in the world. Ad Gethrin is the palace site of King Edwin, 7th century, at the foot of Yeavering Bell up in Cumbria. Sorry, Northumbria, not Cumbria, I'll get shocked. Ad Gethrin is a palace. It's a Saxon royal site, and it consists of here's the sketch of the site by the archaeologists who discovered it. So here are palace buildings in a cluster. A couple of other buildings on the same site, obviously palisaded. You can see from the gradient lines that it's on a kind of a flat platform. This is called the Great Enclosure. Not quite sure what it's for, but that's what it's termed, the Great Enclosure. Now, if you look at the salient points of this, there's the Great Enclosure showing up in the grassland. Here's the palace showing up quite nicely there, with the other palace buildings running down here. And here, this strange building here looks like a cheese wedge. I don't know why people always laugh when I say that. Is the stadia that was built, according to legend, for Paulinus of York when he came to preach to the heathen and convert them. And if you look, you can just about see that here is the stadia, still there in the grass, in the ground, showing up in these photos. We are really, really pleased with this one. So as I said, this is Ad Gethrin, the palace site at Yeavering, and definitely worth a visit if you're ever passing. Let me just get this. Oh, here we go. Oh, I do apologise. It's now decided to put arrows on for me. There we are. Okay, so this is Yeavering here, Ad Gethrin here. Just south of it is this feature, which we've picked up quite nicely. This is the Yeavering Henge, which shows up there. And incidentally, whilst we were photographing Ad Gethrin, we realised that we've got that as well. And there it is. Now, I wanted to show you this because it's not archaeology, but it is archaeology, and it demonstrates the power of the new system quite well. This is a school playing field, and you can see that we've got a couple of soccer football field, soccer, buck. Now, when we took pictures of this, we caught this on the edge of an archaeological site, which is just to the north of it. But it's quite interesting because when we process the images, well, there is the football field, exactly as you can see. You can see those already marked out, nothing special happening there. But what you can see is that there's other things going on in the grass. And you can also see the tracks where the grass cutter is differentially cut the grass. And that's caused differential reflection. But what's even more impressive is that we can see that they've actually changed the layout of the football fields over time. So just pop back here. Here's this playing card football field here showing up, laying on its side, centre circle, goal mouth and everything here. And this one is actually the other way around. Can you see it? There's the centre circle, there's the goal mouth up there. And the same going on down here. All these shadow lines, which look like archaeology, they're not. Well, I suppose in the way they are, but they're actually where they've remarked all their football fields. And we're picking that up because the grass is remembering, the grass is reflecting slightly differently where the old markings were and where the kids have been playing. And there you are. And I actually think that there's possibly a building on this bit of scrap ground as well, which is what's showing up here. So different settings show different layouts. And we actually have, I reckon, 4 different layouts of football fields on the same field. And we can see those shadows, ghosts of them, showing up through the grass. It's a nice little way of demonstrating the technique. So Aldborough, this is the last but one site now. Aldborough is a Roman town near Boroughbridge. It's just to the south of this image, actually. This is the water treatment plant just north of Aldborough. So Aldborough's down there. The River Ure is here. And we've always known that there's a Roman road, or should be a Roman road, running north from Aldborough, straight across and across the river. And it's always been assumed that it follows one of these field boundaries. So I was there last week. These pictures are literally straight out of the processing. And there it is. So you can see that we've picked up, this is the Google Earth image. And you can see that there's no real clear sign of the Roman road. And you can see I'm skipping over an image. I will come back to it. I've got them in the wrong order. I've literally put these in 10 minutes before the session started tonight. There's the Roman road showing up. It's not an elevation. It's not a bump and a lump in the ground that we normally see. This is actually showing up as crop marks in the, it's showing up as crop marks, differential reflection in the grass that's growing through these fields. And that is such an impressive way of demonstrating this new technology. As well as that, if you look carefully, and perhaps you need some of John's wine to help you, but you can see that there's something else running off to the left, to the right here. So the road comes up and then goes off. You can just see those 2 lines there, which form 2 sides of it. There's a building here. There's other features in this patch down here, which if anybody wants this image, they're welcome to it, and they can try and do some interpretation for me. I'm really bad at that. So, and there's some things going on here, but here's the road straight through. This road, next stop, Adrian's Wall, heading north. The one that I skipped over for you was actually the geophysics. Now, this isn't my image. This is Martin Millett, who's been kind enough to lend it to me. But straight away you can see, look at the how these 2 images support each other. You've got this double ditch thing here. There it is there. You've got the road running straight through here. There it is there. And then you've got all these enclosures and plough marks in here. There they are there again. And so you can see that we've got some pretty good supporting evidence. And this little thing running off here, running off to the west, is probably something to do with this. You can see how the road goes up here and then changes direction to head towards the river. Now, we would have loved to get that in a little bit more detail, but this is still bare soil. The crop hasn't started growing. We can only get crop marks when we have a crop. So that's Aldborough Roman Road, Deer Street, famous Deer Street. We've already seen that in 2 different sites that I've shown you. And it's not the end of it, because this one is for John. John set me off on this little task a couple of months ago now, when he posted a 1950s picture, I think it was, of Acomb in York, and what looked like the Roman road running across it. So I've taken that back a little bit, John. So here is Poppleton, here's York. Acomb, for those who don't know York, is here. This is the vaccination centre, testing centre, the old, was once a park and ride, and hopefully one day will be soon, a park and ride again. This is our, and the garden centre here. Now, here is the A59, and this is traditionally a Roman road, but we don't know exactly where the Roman road ran. And we can see that it comes down here fairly straight and then suddenly bends off around here. So why does it do that? Well, it's clearly changed direction. So this is the projected line of the Roman road. So a few weeks ago, this is what a near-infrared image looks like when it's come out to camera. It's actually 400 near-infrared images all combined together. What I did is I went from the road as far south as I could in one session, on the theory that if the road does run somewhere across here, then we should have caught it somewhere in this image. And there's the result, the process result. And here is the Roman road. There's Deer Street. Well done, John. You can see quite clearly we've got a double ditch, we've got a surface running along there, and on top of that, we've got quite a lot going on this field here, which probably needs further investigation, but we're hunting Roman roads today, so let's stick with this. There is a slightly zoomed in picture and a slightly different setting. So now we can't see the ditches, but we can see the surface, pale line running across here. And you can see how the farmer is enthusiastically spreading muck whilst we were taking the picture. I decided to go back a few days ago and do some more. And in the next field, now we've got this line. Here we have an extension. So now we've got Deer Street running from the Northminster Business Park area for half a mile across 2 different fields. And how great is that? Third session, we now have Deer Street, Deer Street, Deer Street. So here we have Deer Street running all the way across this section of York Fields. And there's the line that we've picked up, which is great, because when we take digs that have been done in the last few years, the Cartvale Fisheries Roman Bridge supports, which was found a few years ago, and John Kenny did a small dig at Hesse and found the road surface. We can now project the line of the Roman road. This is the new crop mark that we have, which starts here and runs across to here. So we need to check out these areas and we need to check out some more here. But what we're actually managing to do here is, by a process of join the dots, we are actually tracking for the first time. We're able to track without breaking a single grain of soil. We're able to track Deer Street from Greenhammerton almost into the city of York. And that is pretty much where we're up to. If you're interested in the Deer Street at Poppleton, the local school, I think it's called Manor School, are applying for grants to get their pupils digging it at the end of this summer. So we should be hopefully doing a dig there, and we'll see how much of it we can track before we get to the end of this particular year. So that's where we're up to. That's where YA Mapping are up to, and our research is with Hull University. So thank you for bearing with me through a fairly long presentation, slightly longer than it should have been. And that's it. Thank you very much.